Good evening, everybody. My name is Nardella Thomas. I am the founder and executive director of the National Coalition Against Predatory Lending. I want to thank everybody in the audience that is on tonight because we're going to have a great discussion, in particular, talking about home ownership and predatory lending. And we have opened up this webinar series called Housing is a Crisis for Who? And we have our exclusive featured guest on tonight, which is Domingos DaRosa, candidate for mayor of Boston. Say hi, Domingos.
Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to join
And
y'all on a Friday
thank,
night.
yes, thank you. I hope you're staying cool, hydrated. Got some ice cream on the side there. We also have our two panelists. That is Dana. He is a member of the National Coalition Against Predatory Lending. And we also have our special guest, Priscilla Flint, who is the founder, executive director of the Marcus Anthony Hall Educational Institute, a fierce community advocate, and the host of People Power with Priscilla on Boston Praise Radio and TV. So we're going to begin. The format will go like this. Dana's going to have an opening statement, and then we're going to talk to Domingos. Domingos, I can call you Domingos, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. And then we're going to have a series of questions related to home ownership and predatory lending. You are our featured guest. So audience, all the answers are coming from Domingos, and hopefully you will hear things that you didn't hear before. And we certainly will ask Domingos to come back. If we have time, we will open it up for a Q&A session. So Dana, would you kindly begin with the opening statement?
Good evening. My name is Dana. The National Coalition Against Predatory Lending, NCAPL, is a grassroots organization committed to protecting home ownership, especially those in the minority and low-income communities, from financial exploitation. We should know, for we are victims of predatory lending by Blue Hub Capital, which is based in Roxbury and Nubian Square. As of today, it has been 1,936 days since our group made a public stance to call out Blue Hub Capital for their exploitive lending practices. We are members in Maryland, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Illinois, and Connecticut. Wherever we can go to make Blue Hub Capital uncomfortable, we shall go. It is only fitting that we pay for the betrayal this charitable organization has given us, stripping a pathway to build generational wealth from our homes. We say to Blue Hub, get your foot off our necks and your hands out of our homes. This is an opportunity to talk about home ownership, the challenges that exist, and what we believe is rarely talked about, but very prevalent: predatory lending. Boston has a population of 673,458 residents, according to the 2024 U.S. Census. Black population, 21.5%. Hispanic population, 18.9%. Asian population, 10%. Indigenous population, 3%. And the white population, non-Hispanic, 44.5%. The home ownership numbers have a gap. Black home ownership at 30%, Latino 17%, whereas 44% for white home ownership. We thought about the concept of a webinar. It grew from listening to elected officials talk about affordable housing and the crisis of housing in our cities. Then the dive goes deeper to affordable rental units, the commitment to work with developers to build more affordable rental units. But not all parts of Boston have a housing crisis, do they? Not all city councilors are calling and demanding that building housing in their districts. So begs the question, for whom is there a housing crisis? What will equal and equitable home ownership look like in Boston? If home ownership matters, who will lead the charge? Small conversations to build to larger conversations seem like a fading memory, but tonight we will revive what generations before taught us to do. Talk to one another, listen, ask questions, and then take action. For our audience, we hope your action will be made on both September 9th and November 4th. Home ownership is personal, and the term should not be dictated or dispensed by your race, income, or zip code. We said as much to Governor Healy when she signed into law opening a Pandora's box for predatory lending in Massachusetts. It is for love of community and owner rights that the NCAPL will keep up the charge. 1,936 days and counting. Tonight, we will hear from Mr. DaRosa. We need to know more from Mr. DaRosa about home ownership and predatory lending. We will ask direct questions and hope, like with all the featured guests, receive authentic answers. I want to thank the audience for taking the time to join our webinar tonight and with our wonderful members of the National Coalition Against Predatory Lending. Thank you. Mr. DaRosa, I will turn it over to Nardella.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you so much. So, Domingos, please tell us who you are and why you are running for mayor of Boston.
Good evening, folks. My name is Domingos DaRosa, lifelong resident. Been here since I was 10 months old. I migrated from Cabo Verde Islands, Fogo to be specific. I arrived on the shores in 1978 in Roxbury with my family. From there, I'm a BPS survivor. I'm a gun violence survivor. I'm a city of Boston survivor. I spent 23 years as a city employee in the BCYF department, where I was the chapter president for 17 years, negotiating contracts, dealing with grievances, discipline hearings, and so forth. Over the years, I spent 35 out of my 47 years coaching and mentoring young people across the city of Boston. 15 of those years, I've been the president of the Boston Bengals Pop Warner program located at Clifford Park in the dead heart middle of Mass and Cass. My family has lived in various sections of the city. I currently live now in Hyde Park with my wife and kids. My relatives, siblings all live in Dorchester, in the Bowdoin, Geneva area on Draper Street. I began doing political work as an activist because a lot of the things that I were working on with the young people seemed to intertwine. I actually ran for office in 2017 because of a group of young people who encouraged me to pull papers and run for an at-large seat at the time against Michelle Wu, Anissa Savvy George, Ayanna Presley, and Michael Flaherty. With little to no support, little to no funding, I was able to come in sixth out of the 8 candidates that ran with a $2,200 budget, where I learned so much from my city and how we are put into this box as the minority majority. When that was said, it was kind of weird. But then as you look at things in the city, as Dana just explained, 30% of blacks and browns own property within Boston. That's a huge issue. And those numbers have dwindled over the years. As your neighbor, I've learned so much about how predatory lending has become one of the biggest issues in folks being removed from their property, from reverse mortgages, from liens from the city, and from maintenance, upkeeping of property. A lot of our elders are not able to obtain the funding they need because of their age. They're not able to get certain loans from banks to keep their properties maintained. So my interest is because my parents are also homeowners. I myself don't own a property um, because of different reasons. One of those reasons is because again, it's out of the price range for the buck. We don't have enough inventory here in Boston for folks to purchase. So this is why a lot of individuals are leaving out the city. Certain parts of the city, you won't find homes efficiently enough for families. They're building 1 and 2 bedroom condos. They're not building 1 or 2 family homes so families can stay here. So that's one of my biggest push as mayor is to make sure that we do develop whatever lots we have left, part of the White Flights of Boston, which, as you know, was a huge impact to Black ownership. A lot of these properties were burnt instead of sold to families in need. And today, those lots are still emptied. And the city has come up with initiatives, but those initiatives did not did not focus on our needs. They're not giving us the resources needed for us to build on these properties. We have ordinance now that are keeping folks from being able to develop, especially those lots on Blue Hill area of Boston, closer to the Roxbury line, Dorchester. So I'm here tonight just to talk to you guys, answer a few questions, and see how I can support your efforts as we move forward into this next election season.
Thank you. Appreciate that. We're going to go into our first question here. So just bear with me. I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to do this in a way. So can you see my screen?
I can see it, but it's blank.
Blank. Okay. Let me try this again. How about now? Still blank?
Yeah, it's still blank.
Oh, all right. So that feature is not working. So I'm going to show the question, keep it up for a minute, and then stop sharing. Okay, so it might take a little bit longer, but we'll work through this. Okay.
Yep.
All right. How about now?
It's still blank.
Oh, blank. Okay, I don't know what's going on here. Some technical difficulties, people. We apologize. Um, so I'm going to read this until I can figure this out. The first question is, stop sharing. The first question is predatory lending. Do you know any homeowner impacted by a predatory lender? If so, what have you learned from he or she sharing their story?
I know quite a few, and the sad part about it, the individuals are elders, and they seem to target a lot of our elders when it comes to the predatory lending. These folks were given a reverse mortgage um, that pretty much put them in a position where they were in a position where they were going to lose their homes if they wasn't able to come up with the funding to get them back on track. The sad part about it is there's not too many programs out there to help you get back on track. So what I learned from these individuals is to make sure that you read every single document, that you actually bring in your lawyers. When they tell you you don't need a lawyer, don't believe them. Make sure that you find someone that you can trust as far as legal aid so you can find out exactly what those documents are entailing, because that seems to be the biggest part of the issue is that we don't have the funding to pay for legal aid to help assist as we're going through these processes, especially when we're looking for finances to help us either purchase or repair a home. You're muted.
Thank you for that. So I'm going to go to our next question here.
You multitasking. I see you, sister.
I- So there is an increase in predatory lending practices like shared appreciation mortgages, which disproportionately target low-income, elderly, and minority homeowners. If elected Mayor Domingos, what ideas would you propose that protects homeowners from these wolves in sheep's clothing, and how would you hold these lenders accountable? And I'm going to try to share my screen so you can see the question. Nope. Okay. Do you want me to repeat it? Are you good?
Uh, so as a city, we have resources in our aging council. And that would be one of the things that I'd make sure we implement is to have not only an individual who will work with elderly who own property to make sure that they have the legal support. This all go back to legal support for me, is having someone who knows exactly how to decipher these contracts. These contracts can be pretty lengthy, and they can be pretty worded to where if you don't pay attention to an and or, you wind up putting yourself in a position where you're going to lose your property. And that's something that I've noticed here in Boston. The city provides some support, but not enough support. This is something that we can enforce, especially after Marty's administration, where he made it that developers couldn't come in and buy properties and sell it within 2 years. Having that as a backup has made it a little harder for developers to take people and put them in a position where they're going to put them in a loan that they can't fulfill. I've seen a few families get to a point where it went from having a zero interest loan to a lien. So a lot of these things that come up, it all goes back to having legal representation. We have to have uh, a body of lawyers that we can refer folks to. Of course, we would make it where, the city would help contribute to some of those legal fees so we can have folks properly represented when they get to that point of their, home ownership.
Thank you, Domingos. I'm going to go on to the next question here. It is deed restrictions. Neighborhood Homes Initiative uses city-owned land to create affordable homeownership opportunities for Boston homebuyers. This program comes with a 50-year resale restriction. If you are elected, would you modify this program? And in general, what is your opinion about deed restrictions?
Deed restriction, again, when you go through the home buyers program, the first time home buyers program, and you purchase a property through the city's program, it keeps you from building equity. And when you try to pull that equity, you wind up having to pay back whatever support the city has given you. If it's the first down payment, closing costs, repairs, anything of that nature, you have to give back to the city, even though it's a zero interest, your equity is not able to be built because of this. So if you're looking to buy a second property, you're not able to. And I would like to see that modified. Some folks are told that it's a 10-year, it's a 10-year agreement, and it's not. And most people find out, page 99 on the last paragraph is where they sneak in these languages that sometimes are very confusing. And again, I'll go back to legal representation. We don't have enough folks who legally are aware of what is. Excuse me. And we don't have too many lawyers that deal with housing. And that's something that we need to build. We need to build a database of lawyers that we can refer people to. Some can be pro bono, and of course, some are going to have a fee, but we need to be able to obtain folks so we can make this database so we can start circulating it to homeowners, especially in the low income communities, so they can have some type of protection when it comes down to these different kinds of agreements. And that's one of the things that I've been hearing over the years. Even my own parents went through a similar issue where we were looking to buy a second home, but because we had taken some repair money from the city, and $110,000 lien, it's not a small chunk of change. And just because um, the moves that my parents wanted to do to further their portfolio, they wasn't able to until we were able to come up with the money and pay back the lien that was placed on our property. So, the languages again need to be um, put in layman's terms so people can really truly understand what they're signing before they're signing. So, like I said, I always go back to legal representation because we have a lack of it.
But are you for or are you against the deed restrictions? And would you do maybe like not a 50-year, deed restriction? Would you like cut that
Oh, no, I'm
down?
against the deed restriction. Like I said, it doesn't allow, especially this, our $8 network family to build equity. We want to be able to build equity and build the portfolio when it comes to our financial resources. Real estate is a big part of as they like to say, generational wealth. And if we're restricting people from being able to grow because of these languages in these agreements, then that's how we keep us from being put into a position of economic power. So I would always go against keeping someone from growing as individuals or even as a family. So I'm not in favor of keeping folks confined into growing. So no, I'm not in favor of these deed restrictions. I like to see folks actually be able to pull out equity and grow and make their families, some form of generational wealth in a, I'm not going to say overnight, but as soon as possible.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Thank you for that follow-up. I want to take a quick pause and see if Dana or Priscilla has a question at this point. I'm going to try to go in the back end because I think I have try to fix my screen share so that you can see the next question.
So I have a question, Nadala.
Go ahead, Priscilla.
How you doing, Domingos?
Hey, Priscilla, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. I'm good. I'd like to have your feedback on the pilot, the payment in lieu of taxes. If you were elected mayor, what would you do? Would you um work to make the pilot a law?
Oh yeah, for sure. And again, I'm gonna add a little to that. I met you a few years back, and that was one of the biggest conversations that you and I had. And out of 18 people on stage, we were the only two that was looking to enforce it. Harvard University hasn't paid 13 years of any taxes. BC is at 23% for the last 10 years. And majority of these universities have not paid their fair share. And right now in the White House, you have an individual, the president, who's looking to remove the nonprofit status for not only Harvard but institutes like Harvard, because as you see, and as I see, when you're making enough money to save $60 billion and not give back to the communities that you occupy, that's a big issue when it comes to how we move forward as a whole. Boston, again, hosts more than 60% of Harvard University is in Boston, between Austin, Brighton, and our medical area. Harvard, Harvard Medical School is two doors down from Children's Hospital. And the amount of money that they're able to generate has given them a powerhouse. They're the biggest nonprofit on the planet. And at the same time, they don't give nearly a third of what they agreed to. Like I said, they haven't paid in 13 years. So yeah, I would like to see that become a law. And again, we would have to change the law on the federal level because they have a tax exemption. And for us to be able to do that, we would have to lobby our federal representatives to push that agenda. But again, locally, we can use our local politics not only to put them on blast, for a nice word, but to hold them accountable for the lack of being held responsible. These institutes are not looking to give anything. I don't need a pass to the Science Museum. I don't need a pass to the Children's Museum. The agreement that was put together by the mayor, the current administration, and all our local museums is free passes 2 days a month for BPS students. Not everybody in Boston has a student. So that means that benefit is only beneficial to a selected few. And that's not a benefit for the city. And that agreement was for 10 years. So she's given these institutes 10 years free pass not to pay into the pilot program. And that takes away from resources that we need for our schools, for our elderly, for our veterans. And on the back end of it, we're only told bits and pieces of what the agreement is. As mayor, I will be as transparent as possible to make sure folks understand every single line on an agreement and break it down to layman's term so everybody can understand what's going on between these entities and our city. And that's not what's happening. So I'm with you, Priscilla, on this pilot program because if we hold all these institutes, which is over 1,000 plus, if they all gave a fair share, 50%, we can generate another $6 to $7 billion a year. And that's revenue that we can use to offset our budget. There was an article put out by the Herald today regarding the commercial sections of the city. Within the next 3 years, we'll be losing $1.7 billion in revenue because of the empty buildings downtown now has, because of some of the things that are being done by this administration. We can't turn office spaces into dormitories for the universities that don't pay no taxes. That doesn't work. That's not going to help. That's not going to further our cause. That's only going to put the wealth gap even further and further and further away from the black and brown community, and the achievement gap further and further away from the black and brown students. 45,000 students, 90% of them are black and brown, even though the numbers reflect, 3% at Boston Latin, black and brown, black students, 8% Latinos. So there's a big disparity when it comes to the things that we're looking for as a city for the most marginalized community. And the pilot program is a key to shortening and adjusting those different ratings, as they like to call them, so we can ensure that the next generation is not paying catch up. Like, I'm tired of playing catch up, just like you said the other day. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And the only way we're gonna make these things move is with a political will.
Thank you, Domingos. I have another question. This the elected school committee. What's your take on the elected school committee?
Oh, I voted for it in 2021. I was elected by my peers. My children go to Concord Carlisle. That was a decision I made. I don't know. My son's 19 now, so about 14 years ago. Because BPS was failing. It was, I mean, like again, 23% K through 8 reading level. A school district that has a 99% college graduation rate. Any parent will want the best for their kids. And because we don't have an elected school committee, we have no one to hold accountable. And the more we try to hold our school committee accountable, the less and less they hear us. Every meeting that I've been to in BPS regarding closing the schools or change of a curriculum or hiring and firing of teachers, folks show up by the drones, but the folks on the panel are all appointed by the mayor. They don't have anyone to be held accountable by but the mayor. And as you can see, the mayor is not in favor for elected school committee, even though we voted for it. We had 120,000 plus votes the last election in 2021 to get that off the ground. And one of the things that I've been doing is identifying folks who have applied for the school committee over the years, folks who are currently active in the school realm, who are out there every day showing up to the hearings and speaking on, different issues from, again, the Denver school and Columbia Point's closing. Those children in that school, there's a high number of artistic and special needs students. Those kids take a very long time to acclimate when they go into a new building. Some of these kids are going to be put so far behind that they're not ever going to catch up to that achievement gap. So I'm all in favor of a elected school committee elected by the people of Boston for the people of Boston that reflects the children of Boston. So yeah, I'm all for it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to continue. I'm still having some difficulties, but so we got a question here that we've asked all the candidates. And so Domingos, do you believe, I know we've been in this, but do you believe there is a homeownership crisis in Boston? And if so, what do you think is the biggest driver of this crisis?
Oh yeah, it's beyond, and it goes to that $8 to $246,000 wealth gap. The Black community is valued at $8. There's nowhere in the world um, a family with a net worth of $8 is going to purchase a $1.2 million home. So economic empowerment is needed. Madison Park, class of '96, um, is a school that's a gem. There's 14 trade schools in Massachusetts, and Madison Park is the last of all of them. They're 14 of 14. And since 1992, I've been advocating for Madison Park. My freshman year, the city of Boston was going to sell the school, lease the school to Wentworth Institute to expand their school base. And at the time, Mayor Menino gave us the opportunity, and the students protested and went down to City Hall. And when I mean all 1,200 students got on the Orange Line, got off at Government Center, and we were there at City Hall Plaza like, no, you can't take our school. So over the years, the lack of political will, Madison Park has dwindled down to about, on an average, 70% attendance for 900 students. So you're looking at about 750 students daily enter that building. Building was built for 2,500 pupils. And if we're looking to change the way that we give our children careers, we have to increase the participation at Madison Park and also develop not only an entry gateway to the school, but we also have to encourage the city as a whole, residents, alumni, and stakeholders to get involved because that is the gateway to middle class. 85% of the middle class are tradesmen and women. But when you walk on a job site, 80% of the cars says New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Vermont, and other places besides Boston. And then when you look at the job site itself, and you walk up on the job site, there's one for every 10, there's only one black person, or black or brown. And that's an issue. We have a 1983 city ordinance called the Boston Residency Policy, Job Residency Policy, that was put in place to help Bostonians achieve middle class status. And that's not upheld by the city. There's a 7 people panel that go around the city upholding that ordinance. That's something as mayor would be one of my top priorities for economic growth within the Black and brown community. We have billions of dollars in construction. South Bay Mall itself, when it was redeveloped and they were adding the movie theaters and the ice cream shops and the hotels, was over $1 billion worth of construction. None of that stayed in Boston. All that money left Boston, and it definitely didn't stay in the Black and brown community because most of the folks who were working on the sites were not from Boston and weren't in Black and brown. 51% of those hours. And those hours reflect iron workers, electricians, carpenters, plumbers, drywallers, painters, masonry work, crane, excavators, you name it. Those hours are supposed to reflect Bostonians at 51%, 40% for black and brown, 13% for women. So if you have a daughter, she has 3 criterias to be on a job site. Their response at the Townsend project was we can't find any black women to get on a job site. If we're able to educate and train our students at Madison to become leading builders, construction workers, engineers, hoisting license goes for guys in excavators. The Feeney brothers are digging all over the city, but we're not on those job sites. As you can see when you drive down those job sites, it's one black guy, all whites. And also our fire department, our police department, our EMTs. These are all city jobs that do not reflect those numbers. And that's the way that we fight this housing crisis, is by helping folks obtain a career where they can sustain themselves making six figures to buy these homes. The Boston Globe came out with an article that says you need at least $50 an hour to live in Boston. If you make less than $120,000 a year, you need roommates. So the city solution to that was, oh, we'll allow you to buy a property with multiple people. That's not your decision. That's the bank's decision. You can add 6, 7 people to a mortgage. That's your decision. But the more people you add, the more tension creates in the long run. As we all know, family fight. People go, when things happen, people fight over property all the time. So a lot of that displacement is because of those things. But what I like to see as a mayor is educating our public on what really is going on. There's a shortage of housing in Boston because there's nowhere to build. It's either we go up or we tear down what's already here and rebuild a 2-family to a 3-family, a 3-family to a 6-family, a 1-family to a 3-family. But then again, certain areas of the city already have their characteristics. People moved to Mattapan because it was a 1 or 2 family. People moved to Lower Mills because it was a 1 or 2 family. People moved to West Roxbury because it was a 1 or 2 family. People moved to the heart of Dorchester and Roxbury because it was a 1, 2, and 3. For my family, we purchased a 3-family. My mom and dad on the first floor with my younger siblings, my sister on the second with her family, and I was on the third floor with my family. It worked for us. We were able to sustain ourselves. But now the city is allowing 3 families to be turned into 3 condos. So how do you build equity in a condo that you can't even afford to get in at 700,000? So the displacement is going to continue to happen to the black and brown community. Again, the word gentrification only talks about big bank take little bank. And if we don't change the way that we educate our youngest to fulfill their destiny and get them in a position where they can grow economically, we're going to have this issue for the next 25 to 30 years. Because as you know, most mortgages are anywhere from 15 to 30 years, depending on which route you go. So a 15-year mortgage, that individual will be there for 15 years unless they sell before then. Someone that's there for 30 years, they have a little longer. And the thing about that is there's more complication that comes around when your mortgage is a 30-year versus a 15-year. And as you guys know, the longer your mortgage, the more issues come up, repairs. You need a roof. Sometimes those roofs don't last 30 years. Your boiler might not last 30 years. Your siding might not last 30 years. And God forbid you have a fire or a natural disaster and you don't have the funds to repair it. Now you go to the city looking for some support. They give you the money. They put a lien on your house. Now you want to pull out of equity so you can give your child some money to buy their home, but you got a lien. So there's a lot of things that happen when it comes to home ownership here in Boston that we're not educating folks on. And I do construction, and I'll come in with friends before they purchase, and I walk in and I go to the basement, and the realtor's like, "Where's he going?" "Oh, he's going to the basement." "Why?" I start with the foundation. If I find issues in your foundation, I'm gonna let you know because I can tell if you have knob and tubing wiring. I can tell if you have leakage in your plumbing. I can tell if your foundation is cracking and your house is settling and you got sag and your floors are all unleveled. And folks don't like that because we go off of this no inspection. For a few years we had no inspection. And folks were buying homes with no inspection to come to find out they had a cracked sewer line. $15,000, $20,000 before you even move in. That's a big chunk of money. So, like I said, there's a lot that I know about home ownership. I provide property maintenance to not only my friends and families, but to folks who are referred to me. And I come in and I say to them, a lot of these things that the realtor doesn't say, the things the banks don't say, you have the right to have the roof inspected by a drone and taking pictures. And most people don't even know that. You have the right to have permits looked up when you buy a property before you buy the property to find out if there was any major repairs. And folks don't know that. So we have to educate each other on the process, especially first-time home buyers who have no experience. And of course, that's where a lot of the predatory lending comes in. Elders and new first-time home buyers. So my goal as mayor is to be as transparent in the process and ensure that our ISD department comes in with first-time home buyers so they're not being put in a loan that it's not in their favor, meaning that the property is not going to be evaluated to the price that it's being sold. And that happens here in Boston all the time. Did I give you a little too much, a little too little?
Oh, I love it. I love it. I think you'll be going in and sounds like that you would change some of the standards and maybe have a different administration that really tackles that issue. So I appreciate you diving into that question and giving us your answer and talking about it. You went deep, so I would really appreciate that. Let me move
Well,
on to the. Oh, go ahead.
well, this is the stuff that, over the years that just being me, being someone in the neighborhood and my neighbors relying on my expertise and just my opinion. And I would come in and they'll say, hey, I just got this renovation with the city. They're gonna give me $100,000 to do my bathrooms, and they come in and they do the bathrooms, and I'm telling them, did you get to pick the materials? No. Did you get to pick? No. And it's like, hold on, wait a minute. The only thing the contractor is supposed to do is do the work. It's up to you to pick the quality of materials. Don't let them buy the cheapest materials so they can take the money from you on the material aspect, even though they're being paid to do certain things. Whatever that line item says, if it's $150 a door, it's $150 a door. It's not some door you find on Craigslist for 25 bucks. It's not a bathtub that you resealed. It's not tile work that you went and got from some construction resource program that they have. And that's the things that I tell a lot of folks when they're looking to have their properties maintained and repaired. Do your research. Do not rely on your contractor solely. Do a little digging on the history of the contractor because I've known folks who've had repairs done, given a deposit, never signed a contract, and never seen the money get to work. So there's a lot that goes into this predatory piece. It's not just the lending of the money, but it's also the work from contractors who are scamming people, especially the elders.
Yeah,
So
that's
when I
right.
come into the atmosphere, like you giving me chills, because I'm ready to go. No,
That's all right. That's all right. We're gonna go on to the next question. We gotta still have a few more, and I think I figured out some of these little Zoom gremlins that's been bothering me here. So let me see if I can share my screen. And can you see my screen?
it says you're sharing. There we go. Voter
All right,
question.
here
Nice
we
video.
go.
You got it, girl.
I got it. I got it. I got it. All right. So here we go. I'm going to play this. I hope everybody can see. Yep. My sound is good. So here we go with a video voter question.
Hello, my name is Jackson Nicholas, and I am a resident in Boston, Massachusetts. And my question is, how do we make housing more affordable for younger adults, and how do we make sure that the housing that they have is safe in a good environment to live in?
Great question.
My name is Jackson Nicholas, and I am.
Sorry about that.
No, don't worry. That was a good question. I'm glad he
That's a
asked it
great
because
question from Jackson. Yes.
we've been talking about this for decades now. Because again, young black home ownership is something that we're not talked about too much. Young people are looking for homes too, and the homelessness rate amongst young black folks, it's a real number. Boston doesn't have an act an accurate number because they don't track it by age. They just track it by homelessness. And we have a huge population, especially Ashmont, Fields Corner, Bowdoin, and Talbot Ave area of the city. You can see the pockets of young people who hang out all night and they're looking for a place of their own, but it's tough when you don't make enough funding. And again, I go back to the Madison piece, getting these young people into a trade. Now, if they're already out of school, then we need to get them into the trades by making sure we provide them with not only career pathways, as the city puts it, and again, there's parameters to those programs because they're geared towards individuals who are being what they call um, re-engagement programs for folks who are being returning citizens. So they have a lot of programs for folks who are coming out and they're looking to go into the trades, but the folks who are not coming out and want to go into the trades, they don't really have much for them. And that's something that I'll push to make sure that they can afford and get them into, again, a career, not a job, but a career that they can sustain themselves, where they can put into retirement. Into that retirement, then they can build again, the equity within their retirement to pull when it's time to buy that first time down payment, making sure that they have their credit together so they can buy. I have a 27-year-old, and that's my conversation with him. My 22-year-old, the same conversation. It's easier for me to give you 3% to buy than it is for me to come up with 20% to buy a second home. And that's what we have to educate a lot of our young people. The 3% is doable in other parts of the state. And what I mean by that is when you go to New Bedford and a one family is at 400,000, all you need is $9,000 and you can buy a home in New Bedford. But when you come to Boston and it's at 1.2 million, you need a good $45,000 to start. And if we don't have a way to help you save that or a plan for you to go ahead and save to be able to get there and get your credit in line at the same time, it's going to take years and years and years for them to even be able to be homeowners. So that was one of my biggest things in 2017 when folks were talking to me about affordable housing. Again, the word affordable for who? We've been saying this for decades. The AMI is set by the surrounding metro areas. I said it last night. Newton should not be dictating what Roxbury does, which is the lowest bracket of financial income in the city. West Roxbury makes 3 times more than what Roxbury makes. Same with Lower Mills in certain parts of Hyde Park, in certain parts of Mattapan. So folks in Roxbury have it even harder because the income is only at $35,000 a year. You can't afford to even pay rent. So how are you going to be able to save to purchase? So we need to work on the AMI as a city. We need to put a homeroom petition and send it to the State House and say, listen, we want our own. We want to dictate where we set our annual minimum income, medium income, excuse me. But again, we got to get folks to that 6-figure salary. We got to get our young folks to see their value in their time, to see their value in their skill sets. But we also got to teach them skill sets. I'm a part of the People's Academy with T. Michaels. I've known T. Michaels for a while. He's been trying to get his project off the ground so he can start teaching black and brown men and women the coppersmith portion of construction, which is $1 billion industry, but there's not enough blacks and browns involved. That's another avenue that we can get our young people into so they can build a nest egg to be a homeowner. I don't want to see these kids just renting. I don't want to see them spend the next 35 years paying someone's mortgage and they have no equity. And when it's time for them to retire, they got no nest egg. So I'm always pushing our young folks to push the envelope, break the barriers, advocate for yourself, find things that you're good at. And if you're not good at something, work on it. Bring your education level up. If like myself, if I'm only reading at a 32% grade level, I can't get into a good university. I'm not going to be able to take the placement test to get into a union trade. And folks don't realize when you go into the union, you got to take an aptitude test. And if you're only reading at ninth grade level, how are you going to pass this aptitude test? So we have to make sure we start encouraging our young people to take opportunities and use them to propel themselves into position of power, like Priscilla showed, people power. We gotta start getting our young people to take note on what's being done systematically and how we can go about changing those systems to favor not only them but their families.
All right, all right. Thank you. I'm going on to the next question here. And thank you, Jackson, for that question. Okay, so here we go. And I think you just touched on this. I'm going to share my screen so people can see the question. Now that I got this working. Okay, can you see my screen?
We're black to the black.
Back to the black. Don't know why.
Hey, listen, you're doing better than me because we would have got no screen. I'm still learning how to turn the mic on.
Well, you know what? At least I got the video in for Jackson. So I'm going to read this one. It's on home ownership. According to realtor.com, a person would have to earn $215,000 to afford a median price home in Eastern Massachusetts. That includes Boston. Tell us about your homeowner initiatives and what stands you apart from your challengers.
Well, again, like I said, the inventory is real small. Boston's inventory is again, the state of Massachusetts has a 440,000 shortage of homes. It's a big piece of what's going on in the state. So, of course, the more people come to the state, the bigger that number grows. Home ownership has been a challenge since the 70s for the Black and brown community. It was deliberately done with redlining that still exists today. And for us to be able to change that, we got to bring people's, like you just said, you cannot afford to buy a home making $50,000 a year. 3 people still won't be able to afford a home at 50,000 times 3 is only at 150. That's not counting other expenses. That's just to get in the home. And life is only getting more and more expensive. God forbid you got a kid. God forbid you taking care of some elderly parents. So my initiative goes back to our education system, making sure our youngest understand what is home ownership. I have friends who recently purchased condos and they are struggling because of all the personalities that go in when you own a condo. They're like, oh my God, if I had known this, I would have stayed a renter. I didn't know I had to deal with all these different issues. I didn't know I had a association fee to pay. I got to pay my mortgage on top of my association fee. And then on top of that, repairs and the education piece is missing. Folks thinks, hey, you buy a home and that's the end of it. Listen, you don't have a nest egg in your front door gets, broken. If you got tenants who are behind on their rent and you don't have a nest egg to keep your mortgage up to date, you only get 15 days on your mortgage to be late. After that, they start adding fees and fines. Now we have issues with the federal government. So if you're renting to folks on subsidies, folks on Section 8, and they're not getting their vouchers fulfilled, how are you going to be able to pay that mortgage? So to tell people the reality of what it takes to be a homeowner, it's a beautiful thing when you fully understand what you're you're getting yourself into. It's not a car note that 5 years down the line you trade it in. A home, you're there for 30 years. And hopefully you make it a home. When you first get it, it's just a house, and then you turn it into a home. But those years take a toll on people. I watched my father to his last breathing day, like stress over taking trash out. He was worrying about the rats. He was worrying about the doors, the windows, the roof, the winters. And that's the piece that it for me is very important to educate folks, to let them know we all want to have a piece of the pie, but you got to understand what that comes with. If you're able to purchase, this is what you're going to have to look forward to. I have again friends who currently own, and their attitude is we don't want to deal with tenants anymore. The turnover in tenants, the cost that it takes to flip an apartment to put it back in line. An average apartment can run anywhere from 15 to 25,000, depending on the damage left behind. And we're talking about a $3,000 deposit. That's not going to replace a kitchen cabinets. That's not going to replace a bathroom. So just educating us and letting them know what it really takes, and then also making sure that these lots across the city of Boston are being built and developed by Bostonians, taking some of that $100 million from White Stadium. I mean, if we break that down to 1.5, you're looking at about 80 families that we can give homes to in these lots, that we can build multi units and allow these families to have a place to live. We're talking about spending a little over $42 million to turn Blue Hill Ave into a one-lane road, and it's an evacuation road. That's the road that was designated to get us out in case we had a catastrophic disaster like 9/11. After 9/11, the evacuation routes were being put into major cities across the country. The Rotary Club paid to put signs across the city. So what I'm saying is we spent money on things that we could be using for housing. City of Boston has sold off all its public housing to management companies at the same time. Those are the places that help people get to a point where you can buy, where you can save your money so you can purchase. And then I'll also say, it's kind of hard when you're on subsidy. If you save $2,000 and you're on subsidy, they take your money. So you can never save money to buy a home. So the system itself is created to keep you from home ownership. So how do we add things to that? So the program says, well, you know what? Domingos wants to buy a home. Let's allow him to be able to save the money needed for down payment. So if you're on Section 8 or you're on subsidy, you cannot save that down payment to purchase a home. So the redlining is in so many different ways that we have to get like, listen, I got a chainsaw, let's cut them. Like, let's cut this red tape. Let's educate our youngest minds. Let's make sure we keep our elders in their houses. One thing I like to say, about our elders that most people don't even know, if you own your property and you live in your property, you can volunteer 140 hours a year with the city, and they will reduce your taxes by $2,000. That will help us keep our elders in their home in their elderly stage of life. But that's not being projected by the city. And that's a piece that I will push because a lot of our elders lose their home because they fall behind on their taxes. And then they get a lien. In the city, for folks that don't know, sell your lien just like they sell your debit to a credit company. So they sell your tax liens to any and anyone who's willing to pick it up. So you'll go find out that you're behind a year or two on your taxes. You owe $25,000 on taxes, and someone picked up the lien. The city doesn't care who pays for it; they just want the money. So that's how a lot of our families were getting displaced, especially through that early 2000s into the mid 2000s, that we had this housing crisis and folks were losing their houses from the reverse mortgage and all the predatory lending. The liens were also a way to get in and scam people out their homes. So I want to make sure that we get all those things out and let people know all the different ways. Like you said, like your backdrop says, all the greed, the scams, the wolves, the corruption, the thieving, the frauds, the injustice. It's true when it's in the Black community. But how do we change that if when we put people in positions to educate us, empower us, they're more concerned about their own issues and their own their 9 to 5. their six-figure salaries versus the ones that who really, and again, I always go back to my elders and my veterans because I've watched so many of them lose their homes in the last 10 to 15 years that now they're living in we don't even have enough housing for elderlies. And as you know, elders when they wind up in nursing homes, they take their homes. So they lose their homes because of their health conditions when we should be putting their homes into trusts for their grandkids so that their grandkids can have something for the future. And that's not something that the city's pushing. And I'll push that because I've been pushing that to the community at large because it's something that I noticed when my dad first became a homeowner. You know, you get the 100 phone calls every other day. Hey, we'll give you $5 more. Whoa, 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 whoa. We didn't buy this for $5, first of all. And second of all, we bought it to keep it in the family. And we want to make sure that every generation after has a place that they call home in Boston. You're muted.
I'm muted again. All right. Let's go on to the next question here. And it says, I'm going to read it. Of more than 26,000 languishing development projects in Boston, how many are specifically designated for affordable single-family homes? As a candidate, what is your plan working with developers to build affordable homes for families earning less than $110,697, which is the area median income?
Well, like I said a second ago, now all these lots, every single city lot needs to be prioritized for Bostonians, period. No outside entities can come in and take those lots because of the history, because of the history of the white flight and why it was done to the black community.
But what
We
would
should
you
be
do
able to,
with the developers? Because it seems
well, again,
like you can have the houses and have them designated the lots for the home buyer, but what about, are they going to build affordable homes?
well, the folks in the neighborhood are the ones that are going to build it. Sort of like what we did with DSNI on Dudley and Blue Hill, where those are all home sweat equity. People put the sweat equity in, we built them, they kept them. The developers came in, worked with the city, and we were able to produce, oh my God, there's probably maybe about a good 40, 50 homes, single family townhouses that turned into Brook Ave Village. Like there's things that we've done as a city in the past. And again, everyone's in the business of making a profit. But we have enough. Again, if we start training our community, we can build within our community. We can use folks within the city to build these projects. But most of these developers, they're not looking to come in and just develop and walk away. They want a piece of the pie. This is the reason why we're having issues right now with affordable housing. They're not looking to make affordable housing. I work with the V8 group. They're based on Phil's Corner on Charles Street. They own the building on the corner of Charles Street and Geneva Ave. They just finished building another building with a co-op on Toplift and Bowden Street. It's 100% low income, the whole building, something like 40 something units. They're getting ready to build a 60 unit on Hamilton and Richfield Street. It's two parallel streets. So in the front and the back is all going to be the building. They're going to have parking in the back. You can come from the front, you can leave from the back. That's going to be about 60 units for elderly low income. And the way
Are
they were
those
able to do that,
rentals or are those homes? Are
those
those
are going to be
condos?
rentals. They're going to be rentals. And the reason why they were able to achieve that is because they're working with a developer that's been in the city, Delbrook. They have been building across the city for the city. So they've been given partnerships with these developers who are here to to help build the future of Boston versus take away from the future of Boston. But there's not
So
too many of those.
would you work with that developer and kind of
Oh
push
yeah.
them to do
Oh
more
yeah.
homes, single family homes?
Well,
Okay.
again, we don't have enough space for single family homes. The need is greater. We have, like I said, 440,000 units shortage. That's the shortage in Massachusetts. So when we look here in Boston, just our homeless population is 400. And then folks who are looking to buy, those numbers are growing by the day. And again, when we're at 21% black homeowners, and you want to get that number to go from 21 to at least, I would say a good 40, it's going to take more than one family units to be developed. Sort of like what they did over here on Morton and Harvard Street. That development is all townhouses. Some of them are home owned, some of them are rented, some are rent to own. And those are the programs that we have to emphasize and push. We can't keep just building condos, because again, like I said last night, families can't live in Boston no more because we're not building 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, 5 bedrooms units. We're building 1 or 2. And what does that do? It tells our younger population, if can't have a kid. And if you do have a kid, there's only one kid. How about the families that have multiple kids or families that have, again, elderly that they take care of? So how do we change the narrative if we only have selected lots? We don't have enough space in Boston. It's either we go up, we tear down what's already here, and you can see that they've been doing a lot of that. They've been tearing up a lot of houses and building bigger, bigger, and bigger. And as of right now, today, if you drive down Geneva Ave between Bowdoin and Columbia Road, there's about 4 new projects going on in locations that already had 3 families, and they're putting up 6 families. They're putting up 6 units. And what I say to us as a city with the rent control, anything over 4 units, they're looking to put rent control on those properties to make sure that the landlords don't price gouge tenants. So whatever the last set rate was, let's say, people were paying $2,600, they can't evict somebody and then turn around and charge 3,500. They would have to stay at that 26 or keep it vacant. And that's what they've been doing because they've been reading, the bottom line is the best way for them to get the maximum for their property is to wait 6 months of vacancy. This is why we have so many vacant properties across the city. And again, my other push is, a lot of our colleges and universities take up a lot of our rental properties, especially in the Back Bay, Fenway, Austin, Brighton. These are units that families can be living in, but we're not able to because they're rented out to college students. But again, landlords have the right to rent to who they feel they should be renting to. But that's a conversation that we can have as a whole. Again, back to the pilot program. You know what I mean? So these units, because they're owned by the university, they don't pay no property taxes.
It definitely seems like there should be a lot more accountability and education. Um, and I think voters are looking to really see something new and innovative and not just to talk of just to be talking about affordable housing and it just stops at rentals. So I really appreciate you having these conversations with us. We finished our line of questioning, but there's 2 questions right now in the Q&A. So you got a little time to answer those?
Yeah, shoot for it. I just
All
got to
right.
plug.
And will you come back on again?
Oh, listen, sister, anytime, because again, the more we educate each other, the better it is for us in the long run. And again, I'm blessed to have parents that, the first thing they did was give us a nest egg. That was one of the biggest thing in my culture. Your job, your home, and then everything else is secondary. But not having that as a mindset has created a lot of these issues. And again, I got friends who are homeless right now because some of the things that were never put in their forefront.
All right. Well, let's go into the Q&A, Domingos. And folks out there in the audience, I thank you for your time. Please, if you have a question, put it in the Q&A. So we're going to jump right into this, Domingos. This is from Margaret. It says, are you familiar with what's referred to as a SAM mortgage?
Can you repeat that?
Yes, I can. So Margaret asked, are you familiar with what's referred to as a SAM mortgage?
Sam, SAM?
SAM.
No, that's the first time I've heard of that.
So that is a shared appreciation mortgage.
Okay, okay.
That
So
yes.
I've heard of that, but not with using the acronym SAM. And again, it's another way for these banks to get what they're looking for. These mortgages work for some people, but they don't work for everybody. It's another way. If one person reneges on their responsibility, it causes an issue for the next person. And again, it's another way that we have to educate people on what it is. One person will call it one thing and another person will call it something different. I haven't encountered too many folks who have dealt with a SAM mortgage. So it's not something that's always talked about. And one of the things that, like I said, I would love to have is to keep educating people on what's out there. Because as you know, these different banks, every chance they get, they create something different. They make sure their agents or their brokers are out there pushing those. Just like when you walk into a car dealership and they need to get rid of excess amount of cars, they're pushing a certain color, they're pushing a certain style because that's what they're doing. And until we get everybody on the same page as far as knowledge, it's going to be an issue for a majority of homeowners who are looking to purchase or purchasers. Let me rephrase it.
So thank you for that, for your answer. And I will say just in that the National Coalition Against Predatory Lending, are homeowners that have had that experience of the shared appreciation. And one of the things is we talk about the accountability because there are programs that are being pushed through that the city or the state will allow without doing their due diligence. So when they don't do their due diligence, they think it's a novel idea without doing their homework. And then you can have companies, even if you have a lawyer, and believe me, there are a lot of lawyers who haven't heard about shared appreciation, that there is misrepresentation and um, uh, guided miseducation that will have a homeowner fall victim to this. Even if the person has done 2 or 3 home buying sessions, even if they have had an attorney, uh, it is part of that social contract that these predatory lenders have broken, and it's intentional. But the additional problem of that, Domingos, is that when you go to the city or the state, this is, hey, you vouch for these people. They just want to say, oops, my bad, so sorry. And then they won't go ahead and do the enforcement that's necessary to really stop these people from operating. It really just takes, you shouldn't have to ask them as an elected official to do what is right so that people aren't trapped in these situations and therefore losing their homes. So sometimes it's the design of it, not was it always even about offering a homeowner second chance for a home, or was the design for that displacement, particularly in communities of color and low income? So I'm going to leave that at that and go on. I see a couple of more questions in the chat here, and it actually is from Margaret again. We're going right back to my sister here, Margaret. She says, I'm already impressed that Domingos is transparent with sharing the fact that he is currently not a homeowner and seems to understand the housing crisis through the city. So
Well,
that's a question for that.
I
Well,
I appreciate that.
commentary.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But like I said, we as a family had made decisions that none of us is the homeowners. We put it into a trust and let the trust deal with it. My dad passed a few years back, and my mom, we made sure that she was put in a position where she wouldn't lose what they worked for. And a lot of our elders don't know how to get they don't know how to get their property in a position to transfer it from one person to the other. So everyone thinks it's just, let me leave a will and that's the end of it. And that's why I keep going back to educating our community. Because as you know, when you leave a house on a will, capital gains tax takes all your equity and you're back to square one. And today, you can't afford to lose the equity that you built because, again, if you decided to sell $1 million home and you lose 30% of that and you still own on a mortgage, you're walking away with barely a down payment for the next property unless you go right into the next project within 180 days. And most people don't understand that when you sell, you got to get into a new property as soon as possible. And if you don't make those deadlines, you wind up losing all your equity. So in my family, for what we did was to ensure the future of our grandkids and the kids, the next few generations that come, so we can have that the generational wealth that America's always talking about. We wanted to make sure that none of my four siblings had any kind of control of what happens when my mom passes, because as you know, siblings fight over property, and that puts us in that displacement, and we didn't want that as a collective, and we wanted to make sure that everybody understood. Let's do this while she's here. Let's educate her. My mom's 79. Let's educate her on what it is. Myself, I take care of all the repairs, all the day-to-day ups and downs falls on my shoulder as the oldest son. So I understand the pressures of owning a home, even though I'm not technically the owner. I'm just a piece of the puzzle. And I feel, again, I go back to my elders because I've watched folks spend 60 years pulling equity to give their kids the opportunity to purchase. Kids go off and buy property, lose the property, comes back to the parents, asks for another helping hand. Parent gives another helping hand. Now that they're in their 70s and 80s living on a fixed income and they can't buy their diabetic medicine because they're on a fixed income and they don't make enough because their mortgage just keeps. Again, we had folks who were at 3%. Someone came in and says, refinance. We'll help you save $80,000. And then 6 months later, they're at 6.2%. And it was like, what $80,000? We gave you $80,000 cash and we took back $280,000 in interest. And that's what I've been witnessing as a son of a homeowner. And I kept telling my mother and her girlfriends the same spiel. You have to put your property into a trust. You have to make sure that you have your legal documents, not a will, but you have to have your house put into these trusts through the probate court so your children don't have to pay taxes on them and then they don't lose the properties because they're having disagreements on who or what, who did this or who didn't do that. And I keep asking us to be mindful of that, to teach the homeowners, the current homeowners, if they have a family that they want to have inherit whatever property they own, we must get you in a line with a probate lawyer so you can keep that property in your family because they're waiting. City Hall knows who, what, where, how, and what positions they are. I can go on Redfin right now and know exactly what you're paying for your mortgage. I can know how long you've been paying your mortgage. It's all public records. And they come
Right.
and they attack that. These predators are looking right now as we speak through the system because again, if you're a realtor, if you're a broker, you have access to all the MSL out there. And Boston is one of the hardest cities for real estate in the country. We
Well,
have
that's
we're
We need you. We need you. We need you. And you're saying a lot that's separating yourself from the current administration. We appreciate this, okay?
Oh, thank you, guys. I appreciate the opportunity just to sit and talk with you guys because, again, like I said to Sister Priscilla, I'm not going nowhere. My parents made sure of that. And I don't want my neighbors to go anywhere. In 2017, when I ran, I got on stage and they were talking about affordable housing. I said, for who? I told folks, if you don't own, you'll be out of here in the next 4 years. And a lot of my friends now live in, you can't even go to Brockton anymore.
Right.
We talking about going New Bedford, Fall River, Lowell, Worcester. I got family in Springfield because they couldn't find anything anywhere close.
And that should not be the norm for the Black and Brown community. So in
Can I have a,
closing,
can I ask him a quick question?
yes, yes, and then I have a
Excuse me.
closing statement. Sure, go ahead, Dana. Thank you.
So, so I'm listening to um to the conversation, which is good, and but like I'm hearing that like these ordinances and laws have been in place for some time, and they're constantly being broken or they're not being adhered to. As a mayor, how would you enforce these situations and prevent them from like continuing to like take advantage of the community? Because we're talking about predatory lending, but we got predatory tax laws. You speak about the elderly. Why are elderly like people that haven't had children in school for maybe even 30 years or more, why are they still paying school taxes? You know, how do we how are we going to rectify like it seems like it's very systematic. How do you plan on rectifying and dismantling some of these barriers that we have to face?
70% of the city's budget is funded through property tax, and it's mostly residential. The commercial piece is only a small portion of the city. The nonprofit sector doesn't pay any property tax to the city. So all these big university, to Priscilla's point, with the pilot program, is to get them to actually be held accountable by putting them on blast, letting people know exactly what they've been doing instead of giving them more. GE came to Boston, not to get off track, but GE came to Boston, bought a property downtown. They were given all these tax breaks. I believe it was something like $42 million in tax breaks. They bought the property, the state gave them to them pretty much, and they were able to get a tax exemption of up to $42 million. They never came. They sold the property within 6 months of ownership and they took all their profit with them. That's what's been done to the communities who are not educated, to the communities who are not being informed, to the communities who are not being involved. It's not only about the voting part that we need to take accountability in, it's about showing up to be the fly on the wall and then come back and say, hey, Priscilla, hey, Dana, hey, Domingos, this is what's happening and this is what we need to do to counter it. There's fines that we can apply. There's pressure that we can apply. There's agreements that they don't uphold that, again, as you know, any contract that you violate and you break, that contract is voided. That means we need to start all over again. We need to renegotiate these contracts with these nonprofits. And the city's not willing to do that because the donations that come in during election seasons, year round. Look at who's sponsoring and who's contributing to who when it comes to your elected officials. See where their funding is coming from, and then you'll understand why. Again, let's go back to Marty's administration, where all the developers were funding his campaign. And he made all these promises to these developers, and that's what you're seeing now. Most of these developments you see today has nothing to do with the Wu administration. That's been done 5, 6 years ago under the Marty Walsh administration. She's just taking credit for it because it's rolling out now. Everyone knows capital planning takes 5 to 6 years for it to roll out, unless you put city property. Anything on a city property like White Stadium, the city has full access to how it transpired. So holding all departments responsible ISD, where the permits are being pulled for development. Planning the BPDA, which I would love to have be a voted body, not an elected or appointed, but a voted body to ensure that folks on that panel have the best interest of the people that voted them in. But that's not what happens here in Boston. It's all appointed by the mayor. Even though she said she was going to dismantle it and create something better, the high rises by the Boston Commons now is an issue. But the high rises in Roxbury are not. The high rises in Jamaica Plain are not. The high rises coming to Hyde Park are not. But the ones by the Boston Common, because there's grandfathered in that you cannot cast shade over Boston Common. So now that's an issue. So what I'm saying to us, oh, excuse me, oh, excuse me, is for us to be the fly on the wall, to be able to walk into, thank you, to be the fly on the wall and come back with the information and share it with the greater good. There's not too much transparency coming out of City Hall. We're only being told bits and pieces. And then of course, the listening part. There's a lot of things that go into the abutters rule. I live in Hyde Park. I don't know what's going on in Roxbury. I have no clue unless I'm involved. Unless you sign up for the BPDA newsletters, meeting updates, you're not going to know what's being built in Roxbury unless you're on that news flyer. And if you're not on that news flyer, guess what? You drive by like, oh, shoot, where'd that come from? Most people don't know the Roxbury Prep was going on Belgrade Avenue, where the old Ford dealer was. And West Roxbury said, hells no, we don't want it here. Black kids, definitely no. So now it's built at Clifford Park in Roxbury on Proctor Street, dead smack in the middle of Mass and Cass and the overspill. But because there was no pushback in Roxbury, because it's a commercial area, and Suffolk Construction is the one building it in front of Suffolk's Construction, there was no issues brought up. People who live in the neighborhood are more worried about the comfortability of living with the users community, the homeless community, that you can't go to South Bay and use the bathroom because it's all under lock and key. You can't get a deodorant from the the pharmacy section in Stop and Shop is sectioned off. You walk into Target, you got to find someone to give you something. They got QR codes that you scan and buttons you press for people to come help you get toothpaste. You don't get that in West Roxbury in the middle of Rosendale Square at the Target. And this is what I'm telling us. We have to take the lead now. We have to speak up because, folks, again, some of y'all have been at this way longer than me. And it's getting to a point in your life where you want to be able to go home and relax. You don't want to be on a Zoom meeting on a Friday night till 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night to discuss something that the younger folks should be the ones involved just as much as our senior community. And that's what I see when I go to these meetings. Last night, my daughter was the youngest person in the building, 16 years old. Everybody was over the age of 40. It was 40 to 70, well, might have been a little, probably maybe 80 that was in the building. And majority of them was retirees because the building we were in was for retirees over 55. And their discussion, none of them asked me about home ownership. None of them, because they were cool with what they got. Because they already was homeowners and they don't want to deal with the headaches. They don't want to deal with the headaches of dealing with tenants. They don't want to have to deal with groundskeeping, landscaping, snow removal, and all the other things that come along with it. So they're perfectly fine with a one-bedroom studio. But that's not what's being provided to our elderly community. I would love to see a building in the middle of Roxbury specifically for Black and brown elderlies. And that's not what's being conversated throughout the city. So I hear you, brother. The goal for me as mayor is enforcement, accountability, transparency, and making sure that your voice is at the table when we talk about these things. We don't even have an alliance of coalitions throughout the city. The city doesn't even bridge ward committees. So Monday, call and ask for your ward committee and see if you're able to get information on it, because they're not willing to collaborate and put all these ward committees, all 22, on the same spreadsheet so you know who's the chair, the co-chair, and the treasurer. So when you move into a community, you can say, hey, I want to be on the ward committee because I want to get involved. I want to work on housing in my community by being on the ward committee, where it starts on your ward committee, where you can push these issues to become a political issue, like I did with Mass and Cass, with folks from the South End and Roxbury, because we were dealing with it, and the city told us that it was a phantom of our imagination, that it never existed. But 70% of the overdoses in Massachusetts are black and brown people. Those are not talked about. So I hope I gave you a little bit about where my mind is at and where I want to see us move as a city collectively, not pockets, not silos, but folks working on these things. Rosendale Square has a tower that's going up, and the people are protesting like you ain't never seen. Meanwhile, we got a building going in the back of Nubian Square behind Citizens Bank. That majority of the neighborhoods, like, for who? It's not affordable. For who? And we speak on it and we're dismissed because we don't have the political power to push the needle in the direction that we want to have. Make sure that we all have a say so on how things are coming to fruition, especially when it's our tax dollars.
Well, you've said a lot. We've heard
I
you.
think Priscilla had her hand up.
Huh?
I think Priscilla had her hand up. I think she put it up.
I did see your hand up. Did you have a question?
I did, but it was so long ago I forgot.
Sorry, Priscilla.
I'm
How
one of
about this?
I'm one of them elders. But I'm one of them elders he's talking about. But let me just say, I appreciate you, Domingos. I appreciate you taking this step, because this is a big step here. And we have to get behind you as black and brown people. We have to. We can make some changes, but we have to come together. We have to collaborate. We see what's going on in the city. We've seen what's been going on for the last 10, 15, 20 years. And it's time for a change. It's time for us to come together and say, listen, let's do something different. And that's what we have to do. We have to be different, and we have to do different things. And we have to come together. That's the only way we're going to do it. That's the only way we're going to do it. And I appreciate you. And so, hopefully and prayerfully we're going to be, in doing this work together, because it's going to take all of us. And we can unseat bad people. We can do it. We just got to get to the polls, these community meetings we need to be at. I also wanted to mention not only getting on the ward committees, but getting with your neighborhood association. There's a lot of neighborhood associations within the city. Once some cities have 3 or 4 different areas of their, like Hyde Park has a couple, Mattapan. There's neighborhood associations. That's where the power is. If you're part of a neighborhood association, then you have a voice. And certain number of neighborhood associations make up the ward committees, and that's what we have power. We have other people. We need to use it, and this is how we do it, by coming together. And now, you're the best. Come taking the time to have this form from each one of these
This is important. This is so
candidates.
important.
I appreciate you.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Yes. So, I'm going to say in closing. Well, first, let me just thank you, honestly, sincerely. Appreciate your time, your wisdom, your candidness, your knowledge. You're giving it to us. And honestly, we really need you to come back. We want to talk some more to you. We want to get the people to know more about you, your thoughts, your platform, because this is hard work. And there are people that want change. We say we want change, but we're not the first ones to be at the head of the line. So we certainly appreciate you. Priscilla, I appreciate you for being on the panel. Dana, I appreciate you being on the panel. I'm going to just read this statement out here. And then Domingos, I want you to tell us when I'm finished where people can find you on your website and social media. So, on behalf of the National Coalition Against Predatory Lending, we want to extend our sincere thanks to all of you for joining today's important conversation. A special thanks to Domingos for joining us as a featured guest speaker. We wish you well, Domingos, on your continued campaign to be the next mayor of Boston. And as we move forward, we want to urge everybody to take action beyond today's webinar. Question your elected officials. What is your position on supporting home ownership, protecting homeowners against predatory lenders like Blue Hub Capital? Are they truly addressing what we generally hear is the housing crisis, or is it just an election talking point? Or do we leave homeownership and predatory lending completely out of the conversation? So, Domingos, you raised it up several levels. Saturday is the 1,937th day. NCAPL members will continue our advocacy work. It's not cliche, it is indeed daunting work, but your voice matters and your vote is your power. Your vote is your power. We cannot leave it to the next person. We cannot sit on the sidelines. Once again, Domingos, thank you. We want you to come back. Maybe not once, maybe several times, but we want you to come back. Our sincere thanks again to the audience. To learn more about the National Coalition Against Predatory Lending, our website is www.ncapl.org. Priscilla, thank you. You're the bomb. Dana, our outstanding member, thank you. People, be sure to watch People Power with Priscilla on Boston Praise Radio. Domingos, close us out with letting us know how we can stay on top and watch you in your campaign and support your ideas and initiatives.
Well, again, my name is Domingos DaRosa. I'm running for your mayor of the city of Boston. And again, my goal is to be as transparent as I can be on all that matters, everything that affects us as Bostonians. You can find me on all social media platforms for DaRosa for Boston. My website is DaRosaForBoston.org. My email is DaRosaForBoston@gmail. And I'm not that hard to find. I mean, I tell people this all the time. If we meet one time, you'll see me two times. And if you see me two times, it's going to be a regular. Because I'm here. I live in the city. I travel the city. I move in and out of different communities freely. When I mean freely, I mean freely. Because I've been here through the challenges. I've learned from my neighbors, for my neighbors, to be a neighbor. And this is why I'm the candidate. I want to say, again, I never always say because it's not about me, it's about us. And I'm a person that I've always been a team player. I've coached team sports for 35 years. So I've always learned from Coach Wilson, weakest link, you support it, you empower it, you train it, you make it as strong as your strongest link. So when it's time for you to be under pressure, that chain will never break. And this is what we have to create as a city, especially for the Black and brown community. And I've watched countless years of letdown, promise after promise, campaign after campaign, and the same issues. I said it last night, and people looked at me like, huh? I said, listen, I'm tired of fighting homelessness. I'm tired of fighting hunger and food disparities. I said, we have a new fight that no one's talking about. And they're like, what do you mean? We have no pharmacies. They got rid of all the pharmacies. There's no Walgreens in Boston. It's barely any. And the ones that are around, they're getting ready to close. I said, we having other issues, but we're still working on issues that we should have resolved years ago. And these issues they've been pressing, and they keep pressing. And we're not finding solutions because we discredit people. You don't have a bachelor or master's, or you're not well educated in something, doesn't mean you can't come up with a solution. Doesn't mean you can't add to the conversation. Sometimes listening is the best part of the conversation because you can go back and analyze what you heard. You can go back and concentrate on parts of the conversation that stood out to you and come back and say, hey, well, you know what? You said, and then we can address the issues. This campaign is for the people, not the money. I'm not asking for your financial contribution. I'm asking for your physical support. Share, talk, include others. Bring them to the forefront and say, "Hey, listen, give them one opportunity to talk to you so you can see where he's coming from." I want to build a Boston where our kids have a safe community across the city, not just a selected few communities. I want to build an education system that they call world renowned, but only for certain students. I want to build a city where grandmothers can sit on their porch and don't have to worry about being shot while drinking iced tea. I said that last night and the group looked at me. I said, no, this is a fact. We lost two grandmothers in the last 4 years to gun violence while sitting on their porch. That's not a safe community. That's a community in trauma. And we have to fix that trauma. There's not one light pole that you don't drive by that you don't see a teddy bear that don't trigger you. There's not one area in the city that you drive through and you feel like, wow, why does it look like this, especially in the black and brown community? Notice how we ain't got no trash cans on our main streets, but you go to certain parts of the other side of the city, they got that and an extra can. And this is the issues that I've been noticing, not last week, decades. Growing up on Dully Street and learning about the white flight, how folks literally didn't want to sell black families homes. Ain't we fighting right now for homes? The same homes that they burnt, that we still can't afford because they put us in a position where we can't grow economically. I want to see black businesses in Faneuil Halls where black people were sold, selling black products. I want us to be recognized not only through the Retribution Task Force, but as a city as a whole. $500,000 for you to research 400 years of enslavement? And you're telling me you only had that amount of money to do the research, but you spent $1 million to go to DC for 6 hours of interviews? So yes, my passion sometimes comes out as anger. And how do we change the anger? Because it's not just me that's angry. It's my community as a whole. We're angry about a whole bunch of different things. How do we change that if we're not willing to come together and speak on that anger? Why are you so upset? This is why. I can understand. I can give empathy. I can sympathize with you. But it has to be us showing each other empathy and sympathy. I'm tired of people telling me how to feel to be black and you never had a black experience. I'm tired of people talking about black experience as if they're the ones who created the black experience. This is what we're fighting against. A lot of folks want to tell us how to live, but none of them live us. They don't live our life. They don't understand where we're coming from because their mindset is, I mean, I can go on. And you guys have been on here for quite some times. And I look forward to coming back and talking to you guys. And again, like I said to Sister Priscilla, I'm not going nowhere. The spark is started. The flames is being fanned. The support is building. Folks are coming from all parts of life. As far as I got people calling in to support from Florida. I got a few folks in California who are watching what we're doing. We can make history in Boston. We can show that money does not control our politics like they do on the national level. Now you got the two idiots up top fighting over whose plan is better. Meanwhile, you and I are suffering because the financial support that comes from the federal government is being kept from all Bostonians. Like I said last night at the forum, you cut the line of communication off with the federal government. You cut off the line of communication to be able to negotiate how to move this city forward. Now we're having a $1.7 billion shortfall for the 2027 budget. These are facts. So that means we're not going to have the money to help people buy homes. We're not going to have the money for our school system. We're not going to have the money to help and support our elders. But if we don't get involved now, 27, 28, 29, 30, it's just going to keep going and going and going and going. And those numbers are just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. We're going to go from the 21% black ownership to 19, 15, to the point where we don't have any black ownerships in Boston. And that's their goal. That's always been their goal. But that's not our goal. Our goal is to keep what we have and keep fighting for what we fight for day in, day out. So again, for the people, not the money. DaRosa for Boston. Look, .org. Thank you,
Domingos,
guys.
hey, listen, thank you. Thank you so much. My name is Nardella. I am well, you have the floor, Domingos. You gave it to us. Please come back again and thank everybody for being part of this webinar. Have a good night, people.
Hey, thank you again,
Good
Nadella.
night.
Good night.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Dominguez.